Hello and welcome to the Crafty Pint podcast. I'm Will.
I'm James, and back together here after a pretty awesome weekend up in the high country.
Yeah, the High Country Hop. It was great to be there. Great to host the technical symposium. Really great. It felt like a great turnout. And then the festival on the Saturday as well had a lot of people there too. So they seemed to have pushed the walls out, and it felt like the largest number of people ever. So
Yeah.
it felt like a big success.
Oh, it's a beautiful setting, in the middle of the historical precinct, and the whole town was sort of buzzing all weekend because they have the technical symposium on the Friday. Events, stuff on at the brewery that night. There's a lot of people in the region for hop farm tours as well through HPA. Even more bands on the Sunday, so certainly felt like a buzz all weekend. Good bands, good beers. Got to try Topher's first cask ale. Is all Aussie ingredient English ale, which is pretty cool. It always has some real fun bands on there. It's great to see the 5, 6, 7, 8s. I haven't seen them in about 20 years, still rocking out. And I thought, especially with the symposium at a time when these sort of events have been either a struggle to go ahead or get people to come together, to have brewers driving or flying in from all over the country, plus experts from overseas, was pretty cool. And a nice mix of informative and real sort of fun presentations. I thought, our Bintani Brewery Boosters guy, Sam Bethune, did a great job. We thought we were running a bit late at the end, and you had a bit of a word with him. He goes, I can do this 25-minute presentation in 12 minutes, and nailed it. So everyone still got to have their networking IPAs at the end.
Yeah, it was like he was talking on 1.5 speed, which is how I listen to podcasts, but hopefully isn't how you listen to this podcast.
Yeah, so soak it all in. So that was pretty cool. Looking forward to the next one already. And also while we were up there, you actually did a bit of an interview with Stu Whitecross from Voyager.
Yeah, so earlier in the month, they won gold at the Malt Cup, which takes place in America at the end of the Craft Maltsters conference. We only found out about it more recently because Stu's been on the road and very busy, so they sort of forgot to tell anyone about it. So I took the time to chat to him there, but it was good timing because he also wanted to talk about a festival they're running in October. They don't quite have a name for it yet, or the design element, so we're still watching that place. But basically it will be a similar event to High Country Hop, but focusing in on grains at their home in the Riverina region and the Witten Malt House, and then a beer festival in Griffiths on the final day.
Yeah. Riverina Rocks, maybe. I'm sure there's probably a music festival with that name. But answers on a postcard if anyone's got a great name for a malt-based festival taking place during the grain harvest. So it's going to be, is that right, multi-day affair. So there will be farm tours, there will be like a conference, networking,
and
brewers and distillers, and then the
bakers
beer
festival.
As well. Bakers, there we go.
Which is what I really love about the conference idea. It brings together people from different industries, but I think probably with very similar philosophies as well. So it would be really great to have people from those different disciplines all together to celebrate agriculture.
Yeah, because I guess like the malt, barley, grain does cover a lot more bases than say hops.
Yeah.
Having said that, we did have a story this week that Mick had been working on for a little while about hop waters, which are sort of not really beer, but they're not alcoholic, but they're designed to give people, refreshment, but also, I guess, the experience of hops. I think the first one was in Australia was Heads of Noosa a few years ago.
They've been doing this for quite a while.
Yeah.
Really, yeah.
And there's now close to a dozen different brands on the market. Some of them flavored, with other sort of fruit flavors as well. All the comments and stuff we saw online were very positive. Like those who've tried them really enjoy them. I know our graphic designer Jessie Jungawala, she loved them, especially when she was going through pregnancy, to still get that hop hit. I thought it was interesting that Mick spoke to a few people behind them, and no one wanted to give too much away about how they made them, either how they got the right essence of flavor and aroma without any bitterness or vegetal sort of character.
Yeah, it's interesting. It reminds me of some of the earlier days of non-alc, where people were always a bit sheepish about being fully explanatory of exactly what they were doing, because I guess there's different approaches and no one wants to give too much away, even though you're willing to tell people how you might make your 9% IPA or whatever.
Yeah.
When it comes to the alcohol-free market, it's people.
Well, maybe once you've had a 9% IPA, you're more willing to spill the beans, I guess. It's a really interesting read. We'll put that in the show notes as well. Time for another call out for our Have You Done a Rallings campaign to celebrate the country's good beer citizens, whether that's brewers, reps, someone in the hospo world, just your mate who's gone above and beyond to sort of help someone out in the beer industry. Always keen to hear more of those. We'll be celebrating the next winners and honourable mention in an upcoming show. So that's craftypint.com/rallings. And after the first part of our upcoming interview, we'll also have the latest winner and honourable mention in our Bluestone Yeast Brewery of the Month. So that's coming up in about half an hour. Before then, the first half of our chat with Matt Stewart, which is a bit of a different interviewee compared to the sort of 30 odd that have come before.
Yeah, Matty Stewart. He's a comedian, professional comedian, podcast host. He has done several podcasts, but people might know his voice from Do Go On, which is a really fun, popular podcast. We get into it in the episode. But he loves craft beer, and doesn't work in the industry or anything like that. But he's always sort of floated around the beer scene. He's done craft beer festivals, comedy nights, breweries, and he also has a show called The Beer Pioneer, which is available for anyone to watch on YouTube. The second season's sort of out at the moment. We wrote a story a number of years ago when the first season came out, but it's sort of a travel history beer pub
comedy
show. Yeah,
it's basically a reason just for him and his producer to go on a sort of few weeks holiday drinking beer along the way. But it's a lot of fun, and it was really I really enjoyed the chat. And it's because it was someone who's got that connection to beer but is from outside the beer world as well, so it was so it was real sort of broad conversation. Although maybe it's the fact that Matt's just a professional stand-up and podcast host and made it a lot easier for us to sort of...
He lifts the bar a lot, so which is good to have. But we also invited Matt on because it's the Melbourne International Comedy Festival at the moment. It's kicking off. His show's Bad Boy. He'll also be touring it nationally as well. So if you're listening from anywhere in Australia, keep an eye for that, or follow Matt on Instagram and all those things. He's very passionate about craft beer, which I like about him, and I think he talks about it in a way probably more normal people do than us in the industry.
Yeah, and I think he sort of went to touch upon some of the more political side of things at one point in the chat, and was like, "Oh, do I know enough about this to really say this?" But it's good because that's probably how a lot of people feel, sort of being aware of what's going on, but without being on the inside of the industry. But no, Matt was great. We want to sort of make it an annual chat before the comedy festival every year, just to keep bumping the level of our podcasting skills. But yeah, so he's after the break. Before then, however,
if you do like our podcasting skills, make sure you like, subscribe, and leave some feedback. Cheers.
Cheers.
All aboard! Get ready to travel the world of beer at 22 pubs, bars, and breweries across Melbourne this May. Next stop, Pint of Origin Festival. Visit pintoforigin.com.
Matt Stewart, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. What a pleasure to be here.
Oh, a pleasure to have you on as well. I guess our first technically outside the beer industry, yet sort of inside the beer industry guest as well.
Yeah,
so.
I've got a toe in there, maybe a foot. I mean, as far as I like to drink beer, does that count?
Oh, you do more than just drink beer though, and maybe that's where we can start off. The Beer Pioneer. Do you want to tell us a bit about that?
Yeah, so it's into the second season now. It's a show. I think it's maybe the first in the genre of travel history, beer comedy, TV programs. Mm-hmm. I hope so.
In Australia.
In Australia, with me hosting. So, but it's basically the first season we followed the path of William Buckley, an escaped English convict. And so he left from, this was before Melbourne existed, but basically we're down near where Rosebud is now. Mm-hmm. They tried to set up a penal colony there, which was a big failure. But anyway, he escaped with the thought of walking to Sydney and then continuing from there to China. Mm-hmm. I don't think he's great at geography.
Walking to China?
Yeah, walking to China, yeah. And instead, what he thought he was just going due north, but he was doing so following Port Phillip Bay. Mm-hmm. So briefly he would have been going due north, but soon he was going west and then
So somehow he thought that was the east coast of Australia.
Guess he thought, I thought he was following the coast. But
he wasn't aware of things like stars or the sun.
No, I don't think he was aware of a whole lot, to be honest. So he ended up living with the indigenous populations near Geelong now, for 30 odd years. Hey, do you know the saying?
You've got
Buckley's
Buckley's,
chance.
yeah,
Yeah,
no
that's
chance,
that's
like,
on
yeah.
him.
Yeah, and Buckley's Brewery, you know, R.I.P. That was named after.
There you go.
In Hillsville,
Buckley,
though,
yeah,
which
yeah.
did William Buckley go there or?
No, I don't think
Okay.
so. Well, but I guess you said they went under.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That was a while ago. But it's in keeping, I
but
guess.
that does
with-
feel appropriate, doesn't it? The chance of them making it. But yeah, so we, retrace his steps, only stopping off at breweries along the way.
Mm-hmm.
And then the show is half telling his story, half, or probably more than half, talking to brewers.
Mm-hmm.
A bit of history and whatnot, a bit of mucking around.
Mm-hmm.
And then the second season got a bit bigger. We went from Adelaide to Darwin, which was, a lot of fun. And that's the second season's just come out as we speak.
Yeah, and not so many breweries along that route, but I guess a pretty fascinating
Exactly, yeah.
journey, though. So where did you stop in?
The breweries, they really thin out. Pretty much in between Adelaide and Darwin. I mean, there's not a lot, but
Yeah.
it was like went to Big Shed. That's the first one I went to in Adelaide. And another one we went to has since disappeared. Or it's been bought out by a different brewery, that spot. But in the middle, it was, there wasn't a lot. Alice Springs has one now,
Yeah,
which is great. Alice Springs.
did you catch it with Kyle?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. Kyle's a good man. He's a bit of a character.
Yeah. And he was, it turns out he's a Saints supporter as well, which was, was nice to, relate to him on. Yeah, exactly. So, wait, what are the odds of that in the middle of Australia? Yeah. But, and they also, they have this like loose alliance with a couple other breweries in the Northern Territory. One in Darwin at Beaver's Brewery, and then the Purple Mango just outside.
Yeah, just near Kakadu. Yeah. We pulled our caravan in there a few years ago and just rocked up and just a couple there, just doing everything they can, making beer, making mango chili sauce and everything.
Exactly, that's right. Different mango desserts and stuff. But yeah, it was a little slice of paradise there. And I think those three are sort of working together just to help spread the good word of craft beer.
Yeah.
Because nearly everyone else drinks, Great Northern or whatever.
Yeah.
Which makes some sense in that temperature. You basically want to drink water, so fair enough. But apart from that, we did just stopped at some kind of wild roadside bars and tiny little towns. It was awesome.
Did you make it into Daily Waters?
Daily Waters, I went to that pub there.
Celebrated one of my wedding anniversaries there.
Oh, what a beautiful spot to celebrate.
It was lovely. We asked them to get out the most expensive bottle of wine they had on the wine list. It took them about 15 minutes to find it, and it came out really quite hot and caked on dust. We were like, well, we've asked for it now. They've spent a lot of time trying to find this in the shed out the back, so we've got to go ahead with it.
That's awesome. Yeah, they had a pool out in the back of the pub. Is that right?
Oh, and it's just I don't know. Just the time of year we were there, the entire township was full just of people wanting to go to the pub. It is like a real. In fact, we actually had to put our caravan outside an abandoned army barracks or something because we couldn't even get into the caravan park.
There you
town.
go. Yeah, I think that's what people go there for, that pub. It was packed out when I was there as well.
I don't remember there being a huge amount of sort of craft beer on tap.
No. I think maybe they had some Coopers on tap or something. I can't remember. Yeah, but it was more of the
experience.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that was great. But I really love the whole. It was wild the whole time. You're talking to yourself like you probably do all the time. I was like, I can't believe this is my job at the moment.
Yeah, exactly.
This is pretty crazy. If you're waiting for someone to come along and say, well, hang on, you can't do that as a job. That's ridiculous.
How can that be tax deductible?
Yeah.
And weaving in the history of the areas you visited as well, like with the first series as well, was it an overarching theme or just I fancy going through the Northern Territory?
I think, to be honest, I think it's the show's the brainchild of a guy called Shane Dunlop, and I mean, I don't fully know his process, but I think it probably is. I think it starts somewhere around I want to do this trip, and maybe it works back for. Oh, there are breweries along the way. Great. All right, now what's a historical thing? But basically, the trip follows the path of this Scottish explorer, John McDougall Stewart. So, I don't know where along the line he realised that, but that we also talk a bit about him along the way, and you can't avoid him because
It's the Stuart Highway.
the Stuart Highway, and every couple of kilometres there's another statue of him. Every town along the way is like, we've got to give a nod to.
Well, I think he was one of the more successful.
Yeah.
He didn't get lost or go mad within, a few weeks of departing.
Yeah, at the Melbourne equivalent, Burke and Wills were hopeless.
Yeah.
They didn't make it back.
Yeah.
They just made it to the north, or pretty close to, before I think it was like high tide or something, and they started having to like wade through mangroves, and they're like, we can see it. Literally, they go, we can see it. I think that counts, and they turned back and died before they made it back to Melbourne.
Yeah.
Each in different ways, but all of them, pretty stupid.
Yeah. Sounds like some sort of Japanese movie from the 80s, doesn't it, really?
Yeah, it's a farce.
How can you possibly die in a more and more gruesome fashion?
Yes, yeah. And they all, having to eat their best friends and horses. I mean, their best friends were their horses. I don't think they would cannibalize each other, but apparently along the way, like local indigenous tribes would try to help them, and they'd shoot guns into the air to scare them off. We got this. No, you don't. No, you don't.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I don't know if that says anything. The English guys, Burke and Wills, no good, but the Scottish guy, John McDougall Stewart, I don't know.
There we go. Well,
what's your accent there?
James likes to claim he's Scottish.
no,
despite the English
I have no,
accent.
I have no English blood in the family, but then my generation of my family, we screwed it up. My wife is half English, and my sister married an Englishman, so we've tarnished the Scottish and Irish heritage forever, unfortunately.
Oh dear.
But I've had to move to Australia
Yeah.
just to get away from it all.
You didn't keep the bloodlines pure.
No, exactly. And in terms of the two series, any sort of standouts? Getting back to the beer side of things, any breweries that really stood out to you? Any beers that really blew your mind? Or?
I think Big Shed it's become like one of my favourite breweries. I've been, because I go there for Adelaide Fringe every year, so I'll always go and visit there. Just the guys who run it are so much fun, and the vibe of the place is great. But I love all of those beers, but especially the Golden Stout time, which is kind of
they do some big fun beers, don't they?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And then they'll put a shot of whiskey, of vodka in your beer. Pretty responsible stuff.
If you ask for it, or just when you're not looking.
I think a normal customer, you'd have to ask for it, but the day we filmed, I did not ask for it, but I did receive it, and it was delicious, to be honest. But it was hard to do the pieces to camera after that.
Yeah.
That afternoon, went to Adelaide Oval, and I was the outtakes of that would be like hours long. I reckon.
A lot longer than the actual the
100%, 100%, yeah.
Yeah. And when you do Adelaide Comedy Festival, is there much craft beer, indie beer around the circuit? Is there? We talked to Jade at the Wheatie in Adelaide late last year for another podcast, and talking about the connection between live music and indie music and how they're struggling. And I was wondering if there is much of a support either from small breweries for the comedy circuit or vice versa.
We normally. My producer normally links up with some local brewers, and we do like a cross promo. I do my paddlegram thing, which is just like sit down and drink a paddle with the brewer and take a photo to post online. Another one of those. This is a work.
What am I doing? Don't question it.
So I've done a bunch of different breweries. Big Shed, I've done that separately, as well as Little Bang.
Little Bang,
yeah, and I'm blanking on all the names. It was the one Prancing Pony. Have you met that guy, the German guy with the huge mustache?
The bike riding mustachioed Frank.
Him and his partner, that was so lovely. Yeah, I love doing that. I think more closely linked to the festival is probably Cooper's. That seems to be on at every venue.
That whole city bleeds Cooper's.
Yeah, well, that's true. That's probably not necessarily related to the festival. That's just how it is. But the mismatch you see around a bit as well.
Yeah.
But I really love going there just to, it's an excuse to look around and to get back to Big Shed.
Yeah.
Play some NBA Jam.
Yeah.
What about gigs you're doing in Melbourne? I've seen you pop up at a few local breweries and things like that. You kind of think, well, that's spaces that comedy wouldn't have had just a few years ago. Like, I imagine you didn't really think you'd be in there. You would have traditionally, it was always at the Catfish or at pubs in Melbourne and places like
that's
that.
true. Yeah,
it has expanded, right?
I definitely, and well, I think places like the Catfish and Local Laughs, which are like great craft beer pubs, have a long history with it. So it kind of isn't that big of a leap, but it's great to see like Bad Shepherd do a regular room and a bunch of others do like one-off shows, done gigs down at like two bays and places like that. And I think it just makes sense. I think they're the perfect kind of things. There's a bunch of them up in Queensland that, in the Gold Coast and stuff. I've done gigs at the different breweries up there. And yeah, I would think that if you run a craft brewery, you'd be mad not to have at least a monthly comedy night. It brings in a crowd and drinking and comedy go hand in hand.
And do they expect beer themed comedy from you when you turn up? Is
No,
that part of
nothing like that. I mean, I really should probably write some beer like, but it's too serious for me to joke about.
Well, and just going back a step, prior to the Beer Pioneer, I guess how did you first get into beer and comedy? I guess, but maybe beer first, given this is the Crafty Pint podcast.
I reckon, and this is because I was born in the 80s, but I remember drinking beer from a very young age, like single digits. My dad would give me a taste of the beers he brought home if he ever brought home something interesting, often like they wouldn't be that interesting now probably because the 80s didn't have a huge amount of variety, but I remember trying like Abbotsford Stout and the different Coopers and stuff like that. Just just a little mouthful. I don't know what I'm admitting to here.
No, don't throw your dad on the bus.
No, as we've said on another show, another time, I think statute of limitations will
great.
will be well overdue by now. There's no way anyone can pick you up on this or your parents.
But yeah, he was. I think I just always had an interest of trying the new beers, and I'm so glad that I lived through this time where it's boomed, probably around the world, but in Australia in particularly the last 20 years or whatever, where you can try a new beer every day and you'll never run out of them. But yeah, the first ones I remember sort of, I guess it was probably around the time that this current boom's kicking off. What do they call it? Is it the third wave?
It probably would be, yeah. Or no, probably the third wave and now the second plummet, I'd imagine.
Yeah, we're crashing. The third wave has crashed a couple of years ago.
Right.
We're still in it, sort of trying to put our heads above water.
Yeah, so the fourth wave's coming. yeah. But like Matilda Bay, they'd have like the Bee's Knees and the Redback and all those sort of ones, and different stouts. Cascade, that was maybe the first brewery I went to, did the tour of down in Hobart. Always loved their pale and their stout. They used to have two stouts. I think they got rid of one of them. But and then I grew up in Moorabbin, and Two Brothers Brewery opened up there.
One of the early pioneers of probably the second wave, would they be? I think.
Melbourne pioneers for sure.
Yeah. So that was walking distance from my parents' house. So I was able to walk down there. I can't remember exactly when it was, but
almost 20 years now. They'd be 18, 19
I think
years
they're
ago,
18 this year. 19,
So I was early 20s. Hadn't quite moved out of home yet, so there's a couple of years there, and now like going back now, Moorabbin is a bit of a hub for. They've got the Grape and Grain, which is amazing, and so they took over the old Philip Morris factory,
Stomping Ground,
yeah.
And nearby you've got Wolf of the Willows and a couple of others as well.
Yeah, Cheltenham, we got Bad Shepherd, so it's
Southeast is really
changed a lot. I think an old school friend, I think she started running a bus tour down this just exclusively southeastern breweries. It's like, there's obviously Yeah.
Was this the Bayside
Beer Belt?
Yeah, I
brew?
think so. Yeah. I say a friend. It was.
Can't remember the name of her business.
Oh, yeah. I haven't seen her in a long time, but she. Yeah.
But you say hi anyway.
I would say hi. Yeah. She was actually a friend of my sister's.
Okay.
I'd be intimidated if I saw her.
It's getting more and more distance.
Yeah. It'd take me back.
sentence.
I was trying to blag my way through, but no, to be honest, if I saw her, I'd feel like a teenage boy. Oh, hey, Nat, how's it going?
It is Nat, so
Yeah.
that's definitely the right. There you go. I once saw a postcard with this person's face on. Let's just leave it at that.
I saw her website. I saw her name on a website. So
Yeah. I know. Will's your sort of was it Gateway or sort of what are you?
Yeah,
early
Two
favourite beers
Brothers.
with Two Brothers?
The Grizz, which had that fairy
yeah.
tap handle.
Yes, that's
I remember
right.
seeing that at the bar in Northgate, and I was like, I got to buy this. And spending, like being a student as well, and spending way more on a pint than I ever had before.
Yeah.
And like been blown away because it's an American amber, so it had like malt flavor and American hops, and I was like, whoa, this is pretty real. Like, I
going
didn't
on.
know
Yeah.
beer could taste like this.
And it's what a great moment, but also so brutal because so many other beers you liked moments before will never be good enough again.
Yeah, and probably like if I drank it tomorrow, it wouldn't live up to that as
Yeah.
well either, would it? Like,
It's amazing how it does. Things move on with taste so quick that the ones that used to blow your mind are still nice, but they don't make the hairs on the back of your neck stand up.
Interesting with Two Brothers, though. I do think they've been one of those breweries that's kind of gone, this is what we do, and we're going to sort of stick with it. And I think they've sort of maintained a pretty steady, presence in a lot of pubs that they were in early, and they maintained a steady, loyal following by doing that, and not maybe deviating and doing, some of the silly stuff that people have done over the last 5 or 10 years. So maybe there is something to be said for going, this is who we are, and sticking with it.
Yeah, it's so tricky to know. Like, often the ones that go under have just taken on a big new bit of spending or whatever. It's so brutal. It's like you're getting punished for dreaming big.
Yeah.
Unfair.
Yeah. Dreaming big, timing it wrong, maybe.
Yeah, the timing is so much of it, isn't it?
Yeah. Talking of timing, when did the comedy career start then? Was this over a few beers that someone went, you're pretty funny,
man.
Matt. Come on.
It definitely.
Tell us another gag.
It required a lot of beers to have the guts to do it. That's for sure. Yeah, no, I had friends. It's something that I sort of like maybe deep down had an aspiration for a long time, but never the belief or the courage to do it. I didn't do it. My first gig till I was 29, which is pretty late in the game, which is funny looking back. I feel like I was just a child then, but and then the first gig was at an old Irish pub in the city, Pug Mahone's. I don't know if you remember that. It went well, and that was enough to keep me going. Although I did. You know how some people always take the wrong lessons out of stuff? I'm like that. So that first gig, I was on late in the second bracket. So I was probably an hour and a half into the show, and I'd had 2 pints. The first pint, not knowing when I was going to be on, just to dull the nerves a little bit. And it was such a long wait, I had to have a second pint. And it went well. I'm like, oh, that's it. That's the key. 2 pints.
You were saying yesterday that you reckon 2 beers is the perfect amount.
2 beers.
That's what I do before industry presentations as well. It's perfect.
I think that is right. If you've got,
2 small beers, I would add.
Yeah. I think 2 beers. I'm a big 2 beers fan. It's like going into a comedy show that's 50 minutes long. I'm always like, you got to go in with 2 beers. You don't want to be caught halfway through having just your final sip and then being distracted by your thirst. But the next gig I did, I'm like 2 pints. That's the secret.
You're 5 minutes before you were on.
I was on like second on the lineup, and I'm having a skull 2 pints in about 15 minutes, and it did not go as well. I remember being
on wind.
Just like couldn't get the words out. I couldn't even think of what I was meant to say. I stood up there silently, just going. I knew that I had a bit about. In my head, the bit was called Boat People, and that's all I could think.
Would have been pretty tricky territory as well.
Yeah.
Quite a few years
Oh,
ago.
100%.
In the news.
And I think, from memory, I just repeated boat people over and over with like a glazed look in my eye.
People are like, well, this is pretty avant-garde.
Yeah.
They're throwing an up-and-coming comedian.
Yeah, geez. He's changing the game up there. So yeah, I now know that it's it depends. Time, there's like a more mathematical equation.
An alcohol to time.
Yeah, exactly.
equation.
That's
Yeah,
right.
okay.
Sulfur X sort of thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think maybe half hour per pint at least.
Okay.
Probably.
Yeah. And then so in terms of how that career's developed, then I mean we'll come to the podcast that you do separately, but that was when you were 29. So how far and wide has it taken you, and how regularly are you gigging?
Well, it's so it's like I guess that's 12 years ago, is it? But I it's taken me kind of all around the world. I'd say all around the world. It's taken me to the UK and Europe and
Darwin.
yeah, Darwin and all around Australia at the very least. Did a podcast festival in Thailand. That's probably the most exotic place we've been to. But it's wild. It's sort of like the beer show. I'm like, it's crazy that this is the job. Any job where you're like, it's very reasonable for you to have a beer in your hand while you're doing it is a pretty good deal, I think.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because a lot of people say, oh, either when we write about beer or that people make beer, they're like, oh my God, you got like the best job in the world. And it's like, you work pretty hard at it. There's a lot of stuff that isn't just the drinking of beer or whatever. And certainly brewers, they're like, we do stories there. What's the one thing you'd like, wish you'd known or you want to tell people? And they're like, how much cleaning's involved. So I mean, what's it actually like when you are out on the road, touring, whether it's solo or whether it's part of a group or whatever? What's actually like the life on the road as a comic?
I think the equivalent of the cleaning for me, and it's different for everyone, but the equivalent for me would be the stress of producing new material. Okay. So, and not like it's fun when it's happening, but when you're just thinking like, I've got a new festival show starting next month, which is where I am right now. And I'm like, I don't have an hour yet. And you're like, there's, a little low hum of panic that just is there all the time. Yeah. I'd forgotten about it for the first half of this podcast. Thanks for bringing it up. Yeah, it's really just a sinking feeling. I'm like, yep, that's right.
It's still
time to have a beer.
It is that challenge of having a career, I think, where you do kind of have permanent homework, don't you? Because you could always be doing more.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That's right. So there's a low level guilt, but also like those feeling like that is not helpful for creativity. Like just feeling stressed does not help the words flow. But it's just trying to manage that and figure out the best ways of doing it. Definitely. I know some people who sit down with a beer to write, which can help. But I mean, I imagine sometimes they'd wake up the next day and be like, well, this is nonsense. This seemed so funny last night.
And what about the sort of practicalities? Like when you're on the road, are you funding yourself to go? Are you booking, booking your shows? How are you getting around and all that kind of stuff?
Depends if it's for a festival, that's sort of self-funded and the tickets are, you got to sell the tickets to pay for your flights, accommodation, and then ideally for your time.
Years and years of horror stories about the Edinburgh Festival. And like, why do we do it? Unless you're one of like the handful that break through, it's like squeezing a million people into a room at great expense, and hoping people come to your little cupboard.
And they talk about like, I've never done a run there. I was booked in to do one in 2020, but obviously other things got in the way.
Got away with it.
Probably have a bit more money now than I would have otherwise. But you hear of people saying, I need to sell every ticket to break even and stuff like that. It's like, well, that's not ideal for a month of work. And then they're just hoping that other opportunities come from it. They're seen by the right person. But it's a bit of a gamble. But the free fringe over there, I think, has helped a bit. There's not as much risked up front, and you're shaking a bucket at the end of the show. So it's a lot more old school.
Yeah, but moving the guilt onto the audience.
That's right.
Yourself.
I got to get a ticket to fly home. But in Australia, I mean, you sort of, you get a pretty good idea. I'm lucky I'm Melbourne based because the biggest comedy festival's in Melbourne, and it means that no flights and accommodation need to be
Rent
factored
out your
in.
sofa to someone from
Exactly,
interstate.
that's right. Yeah, really take advantage of other comedians in need. But Adelaide and Perth and all those other places. But then there's other tours that just came back from Brisbane, and that's more of a there's guarantees for some shows, or they're just buying your show or paying you to perform at their room. It just depends.
Yeah. And do you put on nights yourself, like like umbrella nights with other acts or whatever? Because I've met people who've done that kind of thing, whether it's a late night show, to, I guess, supplement their show they might be doing earlier in the day.
Yeah.
They put something under a brand and take it to different festivals. Is that something you've?
I have done that in the past.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've done some tours, lineup shows, and done them at festivals. Not for a little while because so many things. You go, is this why I got into? And you end up doing admin and.
Why am I trying to rustle up 4 other comedians
Yeah.
at 11:30 at night?
Yeah, and they can be a good way to earn some money at festivals.
Yeah.
And I think they're probably Edinburgh, especially. I think it's really smart to do that because they have shows 24 hours a day there. So I've got friends who do 4 or 5 shows in a day, and a few of them will be those lineup shows.
Yeah.
Does sound hard though, doesn't it?
It's a
tough
real
way to
grind,
live.
yeah. But if you remind yourself at times, I'm doing this because it's what I love. It's funny in those moments you're like feeling all the stress. You're like, this is, better. Think about what you used to. My last full-time job was selling air conditioning.
Okay.
So round the corner from Two Brothers. We used to go there on a Thursday and Friday after work. But yeah, so it's easy to forget that this is a great life.
It's probably why I forget. I was about to say, oh, you've got a different type of fan now, but I'm glad I didn't say that because I'd never end up on stage.
Well,
Took me a second. I thought that was good stuff. That's avant-garde.
you want to use it?
And I guess there's the podcasting side of things where you've got a number of shows that you do as well, which you mentioned, you're taking one of those to Thailand for the festival, or was that to do the show there? Or
Yeah. So that was run by finally a Melbourne podcast started that. The Koh Samui Podcast Festival.
Oh, nice. Again, I really want to go spend some time in Koh Samui. How do I do this and get paid?
100% that is what he was doing. Yeah. And very smart, and it was so much fun. But we did my Do Go On podcast. We did a tour to the UK. Well, we called it UK and Europe because we did a show in Dublin and a show in Berlin. So that's pretty European. As well as mainly in the UK, but yeah, that's so much fun. Done 4 of those tours over there, and it's so good. I don't know why you left. It's so compact. I know why you left, but
in terms of getting short flight, different culture, different beer, everything.
Exactly, yeah. And the UK can just drive top to bottom in a day, basically.
Oh, we tell people we're going camping for a weekend and we're driving 8 hours, and they're like, "You're mad! That's pretty much the entire."
Yeah, exactly.
And then you go to the UK and go, "I was going to go and visit somewhere in the next city," and then you just get 10 miles and you just sat in traffic, not moving for about an hour. You're like, "This is why I left."
Okay, yeah. You've squeezed a lot of people into that little island, haven't they?
Yeah. I popped out. Squeezing too hard, but in terms of the podcast shows, into the ones you have going regularly, then how did they come about? And tell people a little bit more about those.
So the Do Go On podcast it's coming. We're doing our 500th episode coming up actually. So it's been going. It'll be 10 years later in 2025. Is that the year in? And so that just started. My friend Dave Warnicky was his idea. And he was writing trivia for a pub trivia company, Quizmasters, I think.
Quizmasters?
Yeah, it was Quizmasters.
There's only a couple, so just take a stab.
I'm like, it's that one or the other one. I can't remember what the other one's called. But the Quizmasters, and he was like, I've got all this, I'm learning all this great trivia, and you like questions, you don't get to put so much trivia into a question. He's like, I want somewhere to dump all this extra information I've got. So he had this idea of doing a podcast where he could tell a longer form story from history to a friend or whatever. And he knew at the time I was working casually for The Chase, that TV quiz show, fact checking. So he asked me if I'd be up for co-hosting, and then we also brought on Jess Perkins. It's a funny friend of ours, and yeah, that's how it started. I think my first report I did was about Burke and Wills. That's why I know about them. Eating their own
good
horses
recall,
and stuff.
though.
Yeah.
Long time
Yeah,
ago.
that's right. It's true. It's a while back. And yeah, that's, we started it. All three of us, our main goal was to help bring people to our festival shows, our stand-up shows. Not thinking that it would, we'd end up doing it live around the world and getting good crowds for it itself. Yeah, so that's basically how that started. And we rotate. Each of us tell a different story each week. I'm currently just having a break and writing my next topic now, which is about a French woman sword fighter who burnt down a nunnery and a few other things. Pretty wild story. So yeah, just sort of kind of do stories about anything.
And how do you find such a topic? Is it sort of like just throw the Encyclopedia Britannica up in the air and see what page it lands on?
I mean, that's what we used to do, and now it's sort of outsourced to the listeners. They suggest the topics. We've got like a Google Doc where with I think 10,000 suggestions. So. We've got a way to go.
A few more years ahead of you.
Yeah, that's right.
There's a few, 200, I think. There we go.
Yeah. So the funnest thing that I never considered was, just because I talk about beer on social media and on the podcast sometimes, whenever we do live shows, more often than not, someone will be there from a local brewery giving me a sampler of their beers. At the end, I'm like, this is the best.
Yeah, right. They know you're sort of becoming the beer comedian, or at least you just love beer.
Yeah, exactly. I got a message in the UK from someone saying, "Would you mind if we brought you some beers?" I said, "I think that should be okay." Yeah, so good.
Yeah.
That's definitely been something that if I told myself when we started a podcast that strangers would start bringing me beers, I'm like, all right, that sounds pretty good.
Yeah.
I'm guessing that doesn't seem that special to you guys, but you probably
You kind of assume that beers will come up at some point when you're writing about it all the time.
I think that's probably what the brewers are talking about as well when they say it's not what you're picturing. We can't afford to just be drinking all the time because we got to work.
Yeah.
Got to concentrate on the work a little bit.
Yeah. I think some people can manage both, but they're few and far between. I think that can really, push it one way and then still do so the next day. But,
Yes, I think it's the same in comedy.
Yeah.
You used to hear stories about the generations before us that were just partying all the time. But you don't see it too much anymore.
No, I was involved in someone's disastrous performance at the zoo in Adelaide a few years ago. I felt pretty bad. They got on stage. I'm like, we shouldn't have got up to what we did over the last 24 hours because this is bad.
Right, they just couldn't get a thought together.
Oh no, just the timing. I was like, it was good for me because I realised how important timing was, because I'd heard all of these gags a few times before,
Right.
and I was just like, this is just this is not working.
amazing.
Like, all the words are coming out in the same order, but just not having the rhythm.
Can you name and shame?
Afterwards.
Okay. Very curious. I mean, the zoo doesn't feel like the literal zoo.
Yeah, when they do they have the big show.
Oh,
It's-
okay.
Let's not get into too many details. Soon he's going to be asking what year.
What day.
And you'll be able to narrow it down to about 3 comedians. But probably a good time to take a break as well, so we can tell you that comedian's name. Cheers.
Okay, time to unveil our second Bluestone Yeast Brewery of the Month, and obviously keep the nominations coming. You can nominate yours at craftypint.com/bluestone, BLUESTONE. But first, Will, shall we start with honourable mention?
Yeah, absolutely. So Jessica from Chocolate Journeys has shouted out Penguin Beer Co., Tassie Brewery. We had Scott on our podcast late last year. She just wanted to shout out because, sounds like they do all the things that make great breweries really great. Friendly staff that are attentive, food tastes great, the local is right on the beachfront. Okay, not every brewery can do that, fair enough, but the drinks taste great. Tropicana was one she said was a favourite, and it's just an awesome place in a country town.
what's not to like?
Yeah.
So I'd love to get down there. You know, Scott's got a few places now around the north of Tassie, so look forward to getting and checking them out next time I cross the Bass Strait. As for this month's winning nomination,
Yeah, so this one comes from Peter Simmons, who's very well known in the homebrew community. He's an acclaimed homebrewer, really, and he's also written a number of books about historic
Yep.
beer styles and how to make them. And he wanted to shout out the Social Brewers, which are run by Bo Curtis.
yeah, so sort of a South Sydney brewery there. He says they went above and beyond to help our brew club extra special brewers celebrate our 20th anniversary. Bo and the team, they brewed a batch of their, do you reckon that's double X? XX ESB, which was derived from one of their members, Craig Dunbar's previous prize-winning strong ale recipe. Not only brewed a batch for them for part of the celebration, hosted the release party. A great time was had by all, and they got to compare the house version with differently fermented brews. And Peter being the sort of guy, he also shouts out those who supplied the ingredients, which was Voyager, the Brew Shop, and Bluestone.
We're getting very ad within an ad here. I feel like I'm in the middle of Inception and I'm getting lost where I am.
So congratulations to the Social Brewers for going above and beyond to help some home brewers celebrate and perhaps even inspire the next generation of commercial brewers.
Yeah, great. So keep getting those nominations in. This month's winner, they get to take home or get sent some Zinc Booster from Bluestones. It's a new product out of their range. It's a cold side edition which adds zinc that is lost in the boil. So I'm sure that will be very handy for the Social Brewers.
For sure.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Welcome back.
It's so good to be back. It's so good to be back. I didn't realize how long the break would be. We all had a nap.
Foot massage.
Yeah, it's a really great setup you got here, actually. I really appreciate it. But I feel, refreshed and ready to go again.
Excellent.
Very grueling that first half.
It was, wasn't it?
Did need a break.
Well, I thought we should get back to beer a bit. And do you want to tell us, Matt, about some of the beers you actually love and sort of what styles you chase down now?
Yeah, I think in the craft beer world, my tastes are probably really vanilla. I like, old friends from Moorabbin are like, they think I drink weird beers, but I think in the beer loving community, I like hoppy and hazy IPAs, and I like imperial stouts and the peanut butter stouts are one of my favorites.
Bad Shepherd.
Oh yeah, the Bad Shepherd's so good. The first one I had was Aether Brewing from Brisbane, or just outside of Brisbane. The Creature of the Night. That was the first one I had. I'm like, holy shit, this is incredible. Deeds do a good one. Everyone, R.I.P. Oh man, still coming to terms with that. I'd reckon probably one of my biggest monthly spendings would have been Deeds. I think if I had an accountant, that would be its own line on the home delivery from Deeds. Oh my god. I guess maybe I'll save a bit of cash now. But when they did that final sale thing, I spent so much.
Well, there was the value there at that stage. Yeah.
I'm gonna slowly work through it. Can by can. It's going to be hard to drink the last one.
You can save it forever.
Yeah. Some of the Imperial Stouts, I imagine, they could probably sit there for a while.
Yeah, fire a tractor if you keep them long enough.
I don't know, what are your... I'm answering questions and not... I feel like I'm being a really bad conversationalist. So your listeners would probably already know this, but so you like the Grizz type beers?
Yeah, I don't know. I'm probably pretty vanilla now as well. I like hazy IPAs, West Coast IPAs, and
Pilsner,
lagers, and Pilsners and stuff like that. It's sort of once you spend enough time around craft beer, though, you sort of go back to that. You regress to the mean where it's like, I just kind of want to drink 5% beers again with a few hop notes.
It can be, harder to find them at times. The ones that are just a crafty beer that's 5%.
Yeah.
I know if we get a whole range of stuff to the house, and like anything that's in that sort of nice Pilsner, fresh pale or IPA, especially because they're my wife's favourite as well, they'll just go, and then you go out to the fridge, and there's actually 2 other beer fridges in the garage, and you'd be like, okay, I've got the weird sours and the now 13-year-old and getting older imperial stouts and Christmas ales and stuff like that. It's like they're probably no good anymore, but I can't bring myself to get rid of them. But I'm also like not in a position to drink my way through them in a hurry. So.
Yes.
But yes, there is that the middle range. They're the ones that the real drinkable ones,
Those
the ones that go
tall cans that are 12%. They're good to share.
Yeah.
Hard to just. They're not a good. Well, a term that I learnt doing Beer Pioneer is a lot of brewers use it independently. They call it their lawn mowing beer. Mm-hmm. That's a common term in the industry. Yeah, I love it.
Yeah,
but yeah, I don't
that's
think
not the 12%.
That's not the Imperial Stout. No, that's right. Somewhere the Pilsners or the
Yeah.
Australian
Because that's the
lagers
thing
or
is like they talk about beer drinking weather being like when the weather gets hotter, and it does make sense. Like through winter, it's still nice to have a beer, but you do graduate towards wanting more comfort food and heavier foods. And then when it does get hotter, you get halfway through a hot afternoon, and it's like, oh, I know it's only Tuesday, but I would love a beer now.
Yeah.
And you want that fresh hoppy,
Yeah,
whatever.
you don't want it too thick or whatever.
No. We are like Pavlov's dog, reacting to the
I did.
the atmosphere around us.
I hosted the comedy stage at the beer festival in Geelong last month, whenever it was, and it was that kind of day where it was mid-30s. It was so hot. And like, oh look, there's so many beers here that I'd love to try that are just not appropriate for this weather. It's like,
Can you put some ice in them, maybe?
yeah, totally.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that's growing up as well. A few years ago, that wouldn't have stopped me. But
and with the paddlegram, I guess that was kind of your first test in the water. I mean, is that like that is Instagram obviously based, and is that something that's still going now? And like, how do you sort of come about?
I do, yeah. I probably less frequently, but it used to be whenever I went to a brewery, I'd take a photo, do the paddle, and I know a lot of brewers don't like paddles because they like them to be the right temperature or whatever when you're drinking them, but I think they just look cool and a lot of the color variations and stuff, and I think it's a great way to test out a range of beer at a new brewery. So yeah, I can't remember exactly what it might have been a Bridge. I think the first one might have been Bridge Road Brewery in Beechworth, and they do a big paddle. And yeah, just sort of took off from there. I think that's why Shane asked me to do Beer Pioneer. He followed me on Instagram and realized that I was into going to breweries, so I'm glad I did it for that reason. And I can't remember what the question was, but yes.
But
in
that
terms
was kind of
of,
your first sort of step into the combining the beer with the
I think
everything else you
so.
were doing, yeah.
And then it just felt like it was a good way to let people know I was in a different city doing shows. You go to a local brewery, go, hey, I'm at the Big Shed in Adelaide. Come see me in Adelaide. That sort of stuff. Yeah, it's I think it was COVID where I probably started cheating it and just doing like can samplers because you couldn't go get a paddle anymore in lockdown.
5 deeds, 400.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. You'd probably tell how my mental health was going through lockdown if you go back through some of those paddles I was having. So yeah, I don't know. They probably should have renamed them candles. No, that word's already been taken actually, so that doesn't work. But yeah, so I still do that. I just love sampling different beers. It's the funnest thing.
Yeah.
I think I don't know if you had them in England, but as a kid, something that Santa would bring each year was the Kellogg's 8-pack little boxes of cereal. And I think the adult version of that is the paddle.
Yeah, loves taking them on camping trips and things like that. It kind of signalled holiday.
Yeah,
almost in a way.
exactly.
Would the Australian version have 8 different cartons though? Or would there be some double ups?
I think there'd be a couple of doubles.
You'd always be gutted if it was the one you didn't like.
Yes.
Why couldn't I have had 2
the
Rice
boring,
Krispies?
two cornflakes. I wanted 2
Where's the
Cocoa
Cocoa
Pops.
Pops?
yeah, exactly.
I think the cereal companies know what they're doing. They're always pushing out the cheapest one. When you do travel for comedy, Matt, do you still make sure you're sort of earmarking a few breweries if it's in the UK or whatever, or pubs? Like, are you really doing a little bit of research and trying to call in places?
I try to. It is. I mean, it gets tricky depending on the schedule. Sometimes it's just you're traveling every day. Travel the day, show at night, and those times it's harder too. You just sometimes just craving going to bed. But if there's any spare time and a bit of surplus energy, then love going around. And some places the English scene's crazy. Like Leeds and cities that I hardly even knew before going there are just like real hotbeds of for breweries. And I'm always like, I'd love to just come back here on holiday and just actually enjoy it. But yeah, one day. It's hard to justify, to be honest.
Well, maybe the beer pioneer needs to go international. I mean, maybe have a word with Shane. You know, is the budget there to send me back over to the UK just to go to good pubs and breweries?
He's dreaming big for sure.
Okay.
For season 3, I think he's in the middle of trying to get funding for a few different overseas options.
Well, if you need anyone to come and fact check
Yeah.
along the way,
Yeah.
Will and I can add to our beer travel article collection, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah, Crafty Pints, the beer pioneer.
Yeah.
And what about you? We've talked about Deeds a bit. Obviously, a brewery you've loved. You know, someone who's into craft beer and drinks it and watching on from afar. Like, what's your sort of take at the moment with breweries closing down and the tough situation of people that make awesome beer?
So heartbreaking. It seems, you know, from the outside that it's just this delayed result of COVID and the lockdowns, and I think there was delayed. I mean, I'm getting in a territory I don't really understand, but there were delayed tax payments or something that are all coming back to hit them at the same time, and it's just wiping out or near wiping out a bunch of these great breweries. To me, it's I don't know. It feels like, not to be too political, but different they pick and choose who they help survive sometimes, the industries. And I don't understand why small business craft breweries aren't better looked after.
When all the money's pumped into Qantas, for example.
Yeah, exactly. It's wild. And I mean, the taxes are already so brutal for small breweries. But yeah, I had this, I was almost getting a bit of false hope about, you know, the voluntary administration that they would go into. Like Big Shed went into it and I was like, oh no. And I didn't know that. I didn't really know what the term meant at the time. But when they came through it.
We thought it was vodka administration.
yeah. That's right. They definitely specialize in that. But when they came through it and a couple others came through, I'm like, oh, okay, this is just a thing they need to do to get through the trouble they're in. And then it happened to Deeds, and when they went through it, I'm like, I'll come through the other side. And they did. I'm like, oh, what? I couldn't believe it. Felt like a family member died or something. It was rough.
Yeah, has there been a similar impact on the comedy scene or on, you know, live performance and sort of the venues hosting such shows? Have they been hit as well? Because we're seeing, I guess, impact across more of hospitality than just beer.
It has, but the
people still need to laugh.
People still don't laugh, and it is like comedy nights tend to happen in bars and clubs and stuff on the nights that the business doesn't have people coming in anyway. Like comedy's a way of bringing people in on a Tuesday night or a Wednesday night or a Monday night, and you know, like I'm trying to think, but most of the big ones from before COVID are back. I think probably some of the smaller ones, the open mics and stuff, but that always fluctuates a bit. So as far as I can think, and comedians, I can't think of any of the big names going under. I think Dave Hughes is still around.
It's not really that he didn't go through voluntary administration or anything like that either. As far as we know.
That's right. Yeah, a lot smaller overheads maybe. We didn't have to pay, I mean, we did have to pay rent through the lockdown. Jeez, we did well to get through it. Yeah, how did we? Jesus. Forget about that. It was a stressful time. Yeah.
But you had a lot of tall cans of beer to
I did.
forget.
Yeah, there were great times. But yeah, I keep forgetting that I was meant to do Edinburgh that year. I've really got to reorganise that. It shows you how long it takes me to get my wheels rolling again.
And Matt, we are releasing this at the eve of Melbourne Comedy Festival. Do you want to tell us a little bit about your show?
Oh, yeah, cool. I'm on at Spleen Bar, which they do some nice craft beer, Stomping Ground and others. and the show's called Bad Boy. You know, there's a little tinge of irony there that I'm the bad boy of comedy. But yeah, it's kind of, you know, like skewering masculinity and stuff, but the Australian idea of masculinity. I'm not used to talking about comedy seriously. This feels disgusting. Actually.
It doesn't have to be serious.
Yeah, okay, great. Well, it's just, you know, it's just an hour of me trying to be funny.
Excellent. And nothing to do with Bad Boy Bubby. It's no connection there. Okay. One of the most beautiful movies.
A beautiful, it was a real eye-opener when I watched that as a young man.
It's the most beautiful depiction of mental health I've ever seen on the big screen.
Yeah, Ozploitation classic, right?
Yeah. A lot of people have misunderstood it and just focus in on the sort of the more gross moments where actually it's a very beautiful movie.
It is it's a really beloved cult classic, isn't it?
Yeah.
I haven't seen it in a long time. I don't think I would have understood any of that stuff back then. It's like, what the heck is this? Yeah,
it's probably the second or third viewing where I realised that actually. Yeah. And in terms of other shows that you'll be heading along to, or people should keep an eye out for, other friends or just people coming from overseas you can check out?
Yeah, well, I've got to look at the guide. But who is, you know, there's my friend Raylan's doing her show. I call her Australia's premier farm-based comedian. She works part-time at a farm. The rest of that's her other gig. And then her material's all about working on a farm. I'm like, that's so fun that there's a farm comedian here in Melbourne. How lucky we are.
She should get a gig at like La Serene or something, you know, urban farmhouse brewery, farm-based comedy.
Beautiful synergy.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think her show's called Sheepish. Matt, what else? He's pretending like he's not here. So listeners, that's going to sound like I was asking myself. Matt, what else? He's really lost the plot, this guy.
You could have gotten away with that, I think.
Any sort of favourite venues though that generally have good, interesting, you know, or different or up and coming acts on? Because obviously Melbourne does end up with these venues in all sorts of, you know.
Yeah,
I always seem to end up in some like 8th floor of an office building.
Yeah.
You've taken 3 wrong turns before you get there.
There are certain ones that you're like, this can't be it, can it? But yeah, I think that's the fun thing about a festival. I mean, like talking about Edinburgh before, that's that to the 1000th degree. It's every nook and cranny, like you're saying.
You're in cupboard 4.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I think a lot of the Melbourne venues, like the big ones, like they'll have rooms that are called the Carpet Room, which is at I don't think it's there anymore. But the Forum used to have a room called the Carpet Room. It's like, that's literally what it is the rest of the year. It's where they store their carpet. Or the ladies' lounge. Oh, this is just the foyer into a toilet, like literally. But I love Comedy Republic. I don't know if you'll necessarily see small names there. I think Will Anderson's on there this year, but that's a great round a year comedy room in Melbourne, and you will see, you know, week to week, big names and names you haven't heard of it. And they do have a pretty decent fridge of craft beers, and they've got I keep blanking on their name. Took over Moorabbin.
Stomping Ground. They've got Stomping Ground on tap.
I don't know what. Yeah,
they've brewed beers with them before, I think.
Yeah, they had a comedy special beer, but yeah, they always have the pale ale on tap, which is what I always get. You get a few beers in your rider when you perform there. It's always, you know, you love doing the venues with
beforehand.
That's right. Yeah, that's I know that for sure now.
Yeah.
I've tested that out a couple more times, and yeah, that is the case.
Yeah.
What are you looking forward to seeing?
I'd have to look at the program as well.
It hasn't come out yet.
There you go.
Peek behind the curtain. You really I haven't even finished my show yet, and you're asking me to plug other people's.
No, Mum and Dad are out from the UK, so I'm trying to think, do I take them something really appropriate for sort of 2 Scots in their Scots in their mid-70s, or just try and find something that
There's got to be some
the
kind of
water
Monty.
and just go, all right then, Mum and Dad, let's see what you make of this.
You got to do the classic is one big sure thing, big name, and then you got to take them to a roll the dice, see something weird. They do. There's always the Scottish lineup shows and stuff, which always, you know, you realise that they're probably Melbourne-based comedians who at one point lived in Scotland.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, we'll try and you always taking a few shows, don't you, Will?
Yeah, I go to as many as I can over as many nights. I'm not one of those. I can't do the 4 comedy shows in a night like some people do. I prefer to load up every night of a week rather than
I would be the same. You'd sort of how do you concentrate? Start feeling like you're in a going to a uni lecture or something. You're like, I can't.
And they'll all blend into one, and you have very horrific dreams, I imagine.
Yeah, that's right.
All right, Matt. Thank you so much for joining us.
Hey, thanks so much for having us.
And good luck with Big Boy. Eh? Big Boy, Bad Boy,
Big Boy Bobby. Big Boy's next
Matt.
year.
Good luck with Bad Boy. There we
Thanks
go.
so much.
One of the best things about this craft beer industry of ours is the way everyone shares, collaborates, and lends a helping hand when needed. But as so often happens, those good deeds can sometimes go unnoticed. Well, now with the support of Rallings Labels, Stickers and Packaging, who are themselves known for their outstanding service and strong relationships with the industry, we're delighted to give every good beer citizen a bit of well-deserved recognition. We're calling on you to nominate anyone who's gone out of their way to help you out. It doesn't matter how big or small, it's just a wonderful way to give that person or business a shout out and thank you. We'll highlight the best nominees on the Crafty Pint podcast, and lucky winners of the Done a Rallings Good Deed will win a Rallings gift voucher and earn a big thumbs up from friends and colleagues. So what are you waiting for? Give that good deed a shout out. Head to craftypint.com/Rallings and nominate today.
The Crafty Pint podcast is produced and edited by Matt Hoffman. You can get all your beer-related news and reviews on the Crafty Pint website, craftypint.com, and can stay up to date on future podcast episodes via our socials.
We wouldn't be able to produce the podcast or the website, events or festivals we run without the support of the beer industry, whether that's suppliers, bars, breweries or bottle shops. If you'd like to support the show or partner with the Crafty Pint in other ways, please reach out to Craig via the details in the show notes.
And if you're a beer lover who'd like to support what we do, you can join our exclusive club for beer lovers, the Crafty Cabal. Visit craftykabal.com for more.
And until next time, drink good beer.